Hi, welcome to Nothing Venture, Nothing Game. I'm your host with the most, your GM Jared. And today, on a special session of Rambling with the Rune Lords, I'm joined by Fabio.
Hey.
And Steve.
Yep.
And we're rambling about D&D 5.5, D&D Next. Hasn't really asserted a name yet, but we're super excited. And we've come up with kind of like 5 things we hope to see from D&D Next. So stick around and enjoy.
Do it.
Hi. So basically, D&D Next, D&D Evolution, D&D 5.5, as it's lovingly being called by the community, is the next growth of Dungeons and Dragons. It's slated to come out in 2024, which will be the 50th anniversary and also the 10-year anniversary of current edition, 5th edition, but it's also the 50th anniversary for Dungeons and Dragons as a whole. With that being said, in their conversation, they basically said the new edition or the new evolution of Dungeons and Dragons will be backwards compatible to 5th edition. So that's very important because a lot of the things we will be talking about, we have kept that in mind. So we're not going to be like, get rid of all actions and it's only story driven or only magic. Just only magic. It's all magic now. There are no fighter classes. So
take something out of my notes now.
Yeah, just only magic is gone. So that's a quick summary of what the next evolution of Dungeons and Dragons will look like for us. So I brought in Fabio, and Fabio is my expert and my go-to for everything Dungeons and Dragons. Fabio plays multiple campaigns where he is a GM or is a player in 5th edition, and he's actually brought to my attention a number of problems, and like we just shoot the shit on conversations in current 5th edition. Steve has only played a fistful of times with 5th edition, which is perfectly fine. Steve is a gamer in the oldest sense of Steve plays many games. So we're using Steve just to bounce off of as a technical aspect and a person who kind of understands backward compatibility and like, hey man, that would be too far. So Steve is the naysayer of the group. He is the sourpuss. And I'm just the ringleader. And I'm very grateful to have my 2 cohorts with me today. So like I said, Fabio is an amazing GM. He's run me through a number of 5th edition things. I love being GM'd by Fabio. He is one of the better storytellers that I've actually gotten to play with. So Fabio, on your list or some of your thoughts, what's like kind of the first thing that kind of comes to mind as a GM looking at this new evolution of Dungeons and Dragons?
So I'm excited to see what they're going to do. One of the cool things I love about 5th edition is that it's simple and easy to play for people that, want to get into tabletop gaming and don't know where in the world to start. The best thing about Dungeons and Dragons is that it's very familiar to a lot of people. Like they've either heard the name somewhere, they've seen a movie, or, they watch Big Bang Theory and like they've watched some of their favorite characters play. And I've been waiting for them to do something new. 5th edition is so much fun, but it's starting to get like a little bit stale. Almost everything's either like homebrewed or a lot of Unearthed Arcana stuff is just starting to get overwhelming. Right. So I think that they need to actually make a new upgrade because it's that time. It's finally reached a point where people go, okay. We love this game. We're ready for the next step.
So I concur. I personally like 5th edition as a starting ground for new players. I wouldn't bring old school gamers into 5th edition only because 5th edition, I feel personally, and this isn't a personal attack on anyone playing 5th edition. I think 5th edition is, I got back into the gaming industry due to 5th edition. And I used to go to the game store all the time and play 5th edition. I was tired of bloat, and 5th edition got rid of bloat. And what I see now, a lot of people talking about is kind of adding bloat back in to 5th edition or homebrewing bloat. Like I've seen people do like how to make your game more deadly. And I was like, well, just Kill your players. That's how you do that. Or weapons. Weapons aren't cool enough, or how to differentiate weapons, or armor, like how to make armor special, or right. That's a real word, right, Steve? Special or so I've seen a lot of that, and I think that is just comes from the nature of being 10 years old, right? Even like World of Warcraft, which was one of the longest running currently running MMOs, they constantly had updates and additional updates. We had vanilla, and then you had Frozen Throne and Wrath, and where we are now with World of Warcraft. And I think every additional addition is kind of like that. And 10 years is a long time without an addition or a rules change.
You need to, get a new phone. It's like new phone, who this?
Yeah.
It's new D&D, who this?
Yeah. So one of the things that I personally hope to see is there's something in 5th edition called bonus actions, right? Everyone knows bonus actions. Steve, you've probably heard us throw that term around a few times. And I hate how limited bonus actions are. And one of the coolest things I ever heard was from GM Fabio, who came forward and he was like, hey man, we at this point we were playing Pathfinder 2nd edition, and in Pathfinder 2nd edition, they have actions. You have a number of actions, right? But this isn't about Pathfinder 2nd edition. But you have a number of actions. You have 3 actions per turn, right? And you can use one of those actions for a knowledge or skill check most of the time. But in Dungeons and Dragons, you have your action, your move, and a possible bonus action. And GM Fabio came to me and he was like, hey man, do you think it would corrupt the game if I took skill checks like a knowledge check or a perception check and turned it into a bonus action for my players, so that they didn't feel they were wasting an entire turn just being like, I'm going to make a perception check. That's my whole turn. 6 seconds of doing this. Just
saw some Sid. What are you doing? We're dying over here. Let me see where.
I got to see where. So that's my beef. And additionally, bonus actions, I feel are a little lackluster. How do you feel, now that I said that, how do you feel, Fabio? Like, do you think that would be something that would be able to be done or should be done? I mean, it was
my list.
It's on your list.
The top of my list.
Yeah.
Right. But no, honestly, I honestly felt like there were so many times we'd be playing games and we're like, oh, I want to really look for maybe like an invisible creature, or I want to spot check and see if there's something in the room that's useful, or I want to do let me see if I can do a nature check to figure out like if is this a dire wolf, or is this wolf just on steroids? Having an additional action to do something where you're going to get some information, or you can slightly affect what's happening without making it have the same benefit as a full action. I had a really great feedback from my players, because then they sat there and they turned, it was like, okay, I'm going to figure out what that thing does. Let me roll a knowledge check, or I'm going to say some slick shit to that. I'm going to do like a bluff check, or I'm going to try, and figure out whether that person's like on our side or lying, and them do an insight check. And having them do these little things that they didn't have the same strength as an action, right? That was the main caveat to trying to balance it. But it gave players that didn't have spells that they can use as a bonus action, or particular, feats like fighters where they can use, action surge, or they can use whatchamacallit, the other thing that they get
second wind, right?
Right. But there's a lot of different moves that they could do, and it felt useful. And I felt having that extra option made their turns feel a little bit more impactful. Sitting there with a bonus action you can only use once per short rest, or once, per long rest, kind of sucks. Or if you're just not a rogue where you can be like, well, I'm going to dash, I'm going to do this, I'm going to hide. It kind of feels like, well, I'm just going to swing and hit things. I'm going to swing and hit things, and I'm going to swing and hit things. I hope that in 5.5 or the next, or, the full revolution of Dungeons and Dragons, they add a little bit more versatility with bonus actions to give people just more options.
And Steve, from a technical aspect, do you feel that would be like backwards compatible?
It's still using the bonus action concept. You're not altering the bonus action concept. Funny enough was what I was thinking, because you guys had brought up the fact that rogues can dash as a bonus action. I always wondered why, and I know that some spellcasters have certain spells that they can use as a bonus action, but there are some classes, like you said, that they can only do it once per short or once per long rest, or they don't really have really good bonus actions at all. I always wonder where maybe not give a blanket, like you can use all these skill checks as a bonus action, more like, well, that class can use nature checks. Like druids, you can use a nature check as a bonus action because you're a damn druid, right? A fighter, okay, well, you pick and choose. Like, okay, like fighters get through certain things, and barbarians can maybe intimidate as a bonus action, and you could just pick and choose. And like certain classes are just better at things than others, so they're a little faster at it than the other classes. Like no one else can dash as a bonus action except rogues because they're quick on their feet. So I think implementing something that wouldn't be that bad, and it gives the other player the option to say, and give that ranger the option to make a perception check to see if he can identify a creature. It's kind of like their shtick.
Yeah, I see both like that. That's a lovely balance right there. Where you have, where Fabio's saying like it made it more impactful for the players, so that their turn wasn't just, I'm a monk, I'm gonna, monk it up, or I'm a barbarian, get angry, because rage is a bonus action, right? In certain aspects, it can be a bonus action, and then that's it. Like you're just like but once you're done, you don't have any more bonus actions. And I like what Steve said. Like if you add it to a class, that also makes the class feel different from other classes. Suddenly you're a druid and you can make knowledge checks on nature because it's kind of your shtick, right? That's kind of the game here. And I think I would be drawn to classes, or maybe when we're talking about a campaign, you have the wizard who gets a bonus action arcane, right? And then the ranger who can bonus action perception. And then someone's like, well, I'm gonna grab, barbarian and bonus action intimidate, and that I'm going to build a charisma barbarian that's focused on just outflexing people, right? Just
hard flex,
just hard flex on people, and I think that would also change the dynamic on how players view parties, where instead of just arguing, hey, we need a healer, we need a caster, and that's kind of, and then the Trinity. You got your DPS, your healer, and your tank. That might change how players start to view classes, and I think that would be fun, and also make classes feel different. Even with like the subclasses, maybe now you get to add an additional bonus action. Cool. So that was my one thing I would like to see is bonus action fleshed out a little more. I know some people online said, "Hey, we would love to get rid of it." I think you can't get rid of an economy like that without changing the games completely.
Absolutely. There's still a lot of like spellcasters that have warlocks have spells that are bonus action. Clerics have spells that are bonus actions. Trying to where would you put them? Are you just going to add they now have a free action? Then it's just the same thing.
Yeah.
Just allow the bonus action to do something else.
Mm-hmm. So Steve, I know you had something you kind of sent. So we have a mass text chat, and Steve was like, "Oh, this is something I would like to talk about." So Steve, why don't you bring up your conversational piece?
Yeah, so obviously we play a lot of Pathfinder here on the channel, second edition specifically, and there's a thing that in second edition that it's something that they can add into D&D that wouldn't really change what shields already do, and we're going to talk about shields for a second. But we've all seen those gladiator movies where you got that one big burly guy and he's sitting on the little guy with the shield, and eventually that shield just explodes, right?
Yeah.
So we understand that shields give AC if you have your shield, but having a shield soak some damage is how it works in Pathfinder Second Edition, and how that could integrate that, and it really wouldn't change the game. All it is adding a couple of lines of text onto shields, and it's like, okay, well, your shield gives you +2 AC. It also, every time it takes more than 5 damage, it's going to take some damage, and you're going to take some damage, and eventually your shield's going to break, and then now you have to either repair your shield or get a new shield, and it just adds more realisticness, and also just a fundamental system into the game that could be really easily integrated into, not necessarily backward compatible, but really integrated easily into for 5th edition.
I like that. Like I one of the things that always like threw me for a loop is like, okay, you have this wooden shield and you're going up against like a big ass dragon, and this big ass dragon's gonna hit you with, its full gut of like straight up flames. Like, block that and you're fine. Nah. Like, I definitely do agree that you should have something where whether it's HP on the shield, it adds some type of resistance, or even if it just gives you like a reduction on like some level of damage, whether you want to make it static or whether you want to just say, hey, all right, you have resistance to, bludgeoning, slashing, piercing, right, to a point, right? There's always like some type of balance that you want to add in there to make it so that this is more fun. But just having what is like, here's 2 AC, that's it. And you can't wield two-handed weapons. Cool. No, let's make it a little bit more interesting. Let's make people track what they're doing with their shields. I've always thought that would be a little bit more fun. So like, I definitely like the whole make shields interesting.
I agree. I concur with my fellow teammates here. Obviously shields are cool. Steve says, give them hit points. Fabio says they should do a little more. I think it does give you an option besides. Sorry if I cross my arms. It's just easier in my chair. I'm not just being salty. I'm not like, oh, shields.
Salty, Jared.
So shields, I think, would be fun. And additionally, like, we all played Legend of Zelda, right? So you could get dope shields that blocked specific kinds of magic, and I know they have them now, right, as magical items. But I think even having early level magical items where like, this shield, or not early level magical items, but like early level items that says like, if you have a tower shield, right, it could give small creatures cover. So then you could get that halfling to slide behind your shield and then just pop out and start shooting, arrows. Also, it gives the DM stuff to sell, right? Like,
sure.
How many times has your players ever been like, I need a new shield, guys? Besides, like, if it's not magical, the players are like, okay, there's a cool metal shield. Yeah, I got this level 1 shield I picked up with my starting kit. When I started at
holding it whole time.
It lasted me through a dragon fight. I went to Mordor through a ring. I don't just fucking buy a new shield.
You don't necessarily even have to like track like amounts of hit points. You could just say like,
5 hits.
Bucklers prevent X amount of damage, like you said before. Like have a static amount of hit points, but the shield can only take X hits.
Yeah.
No matter how much damage, it could be 1 point of damage or it'd be 100 points of damage. It could take 3 hits and then it's broken. You gotta deal with it after that point.
Yeah, and again, backwards compatible. It wouldn't hurt anything. I think it would just add a little bit more for the players to think about and to, it would be cool. That fighter, she's like, hey, I really should buy another shield because this one's on 2 hits, 2 out of 3 hits. And I'm gonna buy a shield. Everyone's like, damn it. Okay,
more HP.
Yeah,
shield more HP.
I'm just saying, it's easy backwards compatible thing, and it would be fun to see like more diversity in weapons and armament.
All right, one of the things I definitely want to see, and I know people are gonna be like, wait, really? Is more feats. Give me more feats. And the reason why I always say with more feats, feats were one of those things that are like super special that you can kind of choose when you hit certain levels within 5th edition. And I felt that when you start the game, there's a good number of feats, but they're very specific, right? And then as the years have gone on, Unearthed Arcana has started adding like way more feats, and people homebrew some wild stuff, right? And I feel that when you start making certain characters and choosing whether you want that level bump or choosing to take a little certain feats, everybody starts picking the same cookie cutter things. Everybody starts going certain routes. We're like, well, you need this. And coming from a person that loves the min-max, right? I like having options. As I've gotten older and a little bit wiser and played more games, I said, you know what? Maybe instead of me trying to min-max, let me make something that's more catered toward a specific type of, style or something that's going to be fun or, this is what I want my character to be. I think giving different options from the beginning that don't just feel like here's 20 feats is 1 page, figure it out. Like if you add something where it's like a little bit more in depth, a bit more fleshed out, where it can do a little bit more funky stuff, whether it's weapon specific, because now there's a feat for almost every weapon, right? Or there's magic specific, because now there's almost a feat for every type of meta magic. Do something where it's like, hey, here it is. Here's a couple pages. Like really go to town, have fun, and here's some creativity. Or allow, people to like tweak certain things with feats.
I personally think some of the stuff we've seen and going to the feat, right? So I'm gonna double back a little bit and then touch on something, and then I'm gonna come right back to talking about the feats. So what we've seen kind of with character creation and the way character creation is growing from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and the newer books, they've kind of instituted a new way on building characters, right? So talking about your species, your ancestry, your heritage, whatever you want to call it, and how no longer are you bound to specific numbers, right? Like, so a dwarf doesn't get a +2 con and a +2 wisdom or +1 wisdom. Now you see a lot of stuff where it's just flat numbers, and you kind of take this as you build your character out, which I think will now play into what you're talking about, where talking about feats. A lot of times, if I wanted to play, my first character I loved was Dargo, the Dwarven Bard. And Dargo was woefully not min-maxed. You don't play a bard and you don't play a dwarf. And this was 5th edition when it first dropped. Like when 5th edition was brand new, and even the GM book wasn't out. So that's how old this was, right? So I remember Dargo had a con and wisdom, high con and wisdom, but their charisma was kind of low, and my casting was off of charisma as a bard, right? But they could take a hit, and they could definitely play their war drums fairly well, right? But every time it came to a level, instead of taking a feat, which was optional, it was a variant rule, but the GM that I was playing with was like, you could take a feat or you could take the stat bonus. I constantly took the stat bonus because I felt like I was letting my team down whenever I casted a spell and it failed because my numbers weren't high enough, right? I wasn't keeping pace with the monsters. So I never took a feat. And some of the feats I wanted would have been cool. They they would have made my character more fleshed out in roleplay sense. So talking about that, I think because of the way we're now seeing character creation being done via Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and the way they're leading, I think it's going to be like that in the next edition of Dungeons and Dragons. I think feats will become more viable, and instead of being a variant rule, I think should be a standard rule. And maybe instead of saying, okay, you can either get this bump in stats or a feat, they might say every odd level you get a feat, just flat out. And certain levels, and right, like every what is it now, like 4, 6, 8, right? Like as you level, those are the stat bump levels. Maybe they'll keep the stat bump levels flat, and then they'll say every odd level you get a feat, a possible feat option. That's kind of where I think, and I don't think feats they're still in the game, right? So they're still backwards compatible, right, Steve? It's still standard.
Yeah, the thought I was thinking of, I'm like, no, that really wouldn't work. Is adding feats to classes, but then you're stepping on the toes of the classes that don't have it in the original system, so that really wouldn't work. But I was thinking, like, when you mentioned that, like baking in feats at certain levels and baking in stat bumps at certain levels, that literally is 3rd edition D&D. So they've done that before.
Wouldn't be that hard. It'd be easy transition, something that people can just adopt. And like, boom, now you feel like, oh, my rogue's different than your rogue.
The only thing that you can come up with, and this is the similar thing that even like with changing the shield rule, is if I have a D&D, the next episode edition, the new edition of D&D, and then you are playing the 5th edition, and your character doesn't have extra feats and my character does, there's going to be a slight power difference. The same thing is even if you have the shield that reduces damage and it just gets destroyed in 3 hits. Well, there's a negative, but there's a positive, but my shit doesn't work that way. So it's gonna be interesting to see if they do incorporate something where feats become a more normalized thing instead of a variant rule. How they're gonna play that out, if they're gonna try to make it to where in I believe in first edition Pathfinder they came out with a book called Unchained, and the Unchained thing changed the way certain classes work, so you could play the new version or you could play the old version. So it might do something like that where, okay, if you're playing, D&D the next episode rogue, okay, well then it has to be some concessions if you're going to get free feats that the regular rogue's not going to get. So they might do something like that.
Right? Like, how hard would it be to say, like, let's say, Fabio, you're playing a D&D, the next episode character, and Steve, you're playing D&D old school, fifth,
vanilla.
Vanilla.
And
right, the expansions, sorry.
You haven't gotten the upgrade. And then I was playing, and then I was GMing the new version of D&D. I think just giving you the option, right? Like, if you don't change a lot of stats, right? I don't think stats are going to change. I think bounded accuracy is where it's going to stay, right? It wouldn't be too hard for me to just be like, okay, well, here's 2 feats. Just grab 2 free feats because you're level 5, right? And then you'd be like, oh, cool. I'm going to take this ability that lets me run a little faster, and then I'm going to grab this, and it gives me a few additional magic. So GM Fabio, I know you have another one that an itch and an argument that you've had where we've had this conversation. So tell me, lay upon us your woes.
This has definitely been table flipping inducing at least once or twice, right? It's the whole flanking rule. It's a lot of people are like, oh, flanking, you can do that all the time. Well, it depends on who's DMing and it depends on who you're playing with. It's a variant rule, right? It's not something where it's built into the game. They say you can use it if you want, but it's up to you. In my mind, it's like, listen, in most other games, there's some type of benefit or drawback to having, being attacked from the front and the back, right? Some people pay extra for that, but at the same time, I look at it from the point of this should be built in, right? There should be, part of your meal, have your flanking and eat it too. Or, and if they want to change it from giving advantage to like maybe just a static bonus, like, all right, cool. You can do that. You know that you can either, or a static drawback where it's your AC is -2 or +2 or whatever, or you can hit a little bit better. But like having it where it's like you choose like advantage or the other person has or not, it's like, I was like, listen, built it into the game. I don't understand why it's not. We all more often than not want to play with it. I like for the stinky DMs to take it out. But, that's just me being, who I am.
You're only slightly jaded.
A little bit, just a little bit,
just a little bit. I honestly see this is how little I've actually played fifth edition. This is time and how many things that are running around at a given time. I just assumed flanking was a thing, and apparently it's a thing that certain people can choose to do. It's like a variant rule similar to the feats thing. But yet again, almost every person I've talked to who has played D&D or run D&D 5th, everyone has feats. So this same thing is that flanking is just something that I feel is an integral part of most grid-based role-playing games. You usually have a disadvantage if someone's trying to stab you in the back while you're dealing with someone trying to chop your head off in the front. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, how can I say this lovely? I am on Team Fabio on flanking, but I've also been the GM who's been like, as per rule, you don't get flanking. and that's literally what set that off. I'm pretty sure I was the first one to set him off on the flanking, and then at the table we both like ripped our player handbook open and like looked the rule up, and if I was like, fine, fuck you then. And then that was it. And then we kept the game going, and, but after that, I was like, yeah, flanking has to be established because like there was a number of times, like I remember when we were playing Storm King's Thunder, and we got behind a giant. Like there was like, I remember like 2 players had flanked a giant and they were both like going to go ham. And like, it was way more epic because like the giant knew he was flanked. So the giant was like, and Fabio was my GM, and Fabio's really expressive and very great at like telling you this story. So the giant's like panicked and trying to figure a way out, and then the players are just unloading on the giant. And I don't know if anyone knows this, but if you're, what were we, like level 2? Right?
Those are like level 3.
3. If we were level 3. If level 3 players take a giant down, it changes the dynamic of the game. We were all SOL. Like we knew we were like this fight was going bad. And then the moment we took out, like the 2 players took out that giant, like the table changed. Like we became much more assertive. We got back into the game. We like it changed the momentum of the fight. And it really created this epic encounter that I still play through in my head, like in like, you know, the be real of like cool things I've done, you know, and we still talk about it, and that's how awesome it was. So flanking should be there because it can again change the dynamic, or even make the players change their dynamic. If now they're getting flanked by goblins, you know, suddenly a player's like, I'm gonna grab a goblin and run because I don't want to be in this position. So I'm team flank. They should just put it in. They know better. I don't know why they made it a variant. I'm sure there's a reason. I boo that reason though.
And push comes to shove, your monsters can use it against your players.
Yeah,
that's fair. It's all around. Everybody gets flanking, and it also makes, you know, fights a little bit more tactical. Makes things a little bit scarier. It's like, oh, you now just got swarmed by a bunch of crap, I gotta get out of there. Versus, no, I'm gonna stand out here. Now I'm fine. Oh, bump that. You're in a scary situation. Deal with it, right? Or you're now in an advantageous situation. Abuse it.
Expanding on crafting and not more non-magical healing. And the reason why I say expanding on crafting is basically there's really not many rules on how to make potions. It's just 50 gold pieces, and then you have to have a kit and time. And that's really it. And that's really it. There's not much more they expanded on since then. They've added in different kinds of potions and stuff like that, but also non-magical healing. One of the coolest characters, and you could check them out. Obviously, you've probably seen them, but Ginny D, she has her medic character that she portrays, and it's a medic, like old school medic, like pulling, like it's a really cool character. Every time I see that, I think 5th edition needs a medic character or more non-magical healing, where it would be, you know, like there is the medicine check, but medicine, you know, like it doesn't work the same way.
Didn't do anything.
You know, so I think more non-magical healing and more expansion on crafting and how to craft maybe non-magical stuff or bombs and healing salves, right? I think that would be interesting to bring that in and kind of expand on the fact that like maybe I'm a fighter, right? Like, so I'm a generic fighter. I'm a soldier, and I've been in war, and I've seen my friends take an arrow to the knee, and I have to like fix the arrow, right? Like I've done first aid on myself and on them, and you know that I would like to represent that through my character. Now I can role play that, sure, but it would still be cool to have some kind of tangible number and system in place. Thoughts?
I agree. One of the cool things I always saw, like, one of the things that we added in our campaign was like with the medicine kit or the healer's kit, I should say. It is like, oh, you can use it to stabilize. Like, all right, but if you roll over, you know, you roll a DC 15, right? You can heal somebody to a D4, right? And this is for parties that like not everybody wants to play a healer, you know, or not everybody wants to take healing, or maybe your healer is down, right? And you have like the one person that dedicated everything that they had to healing, and now they're just like, well, we can cross and pray to their god that they get up, you know, and see what happens. But no, having like a little bit more additional options where it's, you know, you can find like a medic kit in a dungeon. That makes sense. Like we all know, like, yeah, you can find a healing pot, but you know, maybe you want to make it like low magic, you know, having additional options for that. Be able to craft different potions that do other things. You know, like, I'll be honest with you, I've been playing 5th edition for a very long time. I still have no clue how to craft things half the time. You know, and that's weird. Like the fact that it's not always straightforward and that you got to really look for it or create things your own and homebrew it. You know, it's fun creativity wise, but like having something that's like set in stone. Well, you can make this and this is what it takes. You can do this and this is what it takes. You can find these things. They're, common, medium, rare, or legendary, and then give them to your players. And then when they have downtime, they can actually make something fun and make something interesting and make something useful. Right. I think that's one of the cool things where I want to make something useful. I want to make traps. I want to use a bear trap. I want to make potions. I want to make arrows that do weird stuff. Right. These are things that like I know I've bothered Jared with until 2 or 3 in the morning. And he's like, I have a wife and kids, Fabio. Please make it stop. Right. But I do it anyway. Right. And I know I'm not alone out there. So yeah, being able to craft things and making it easy to understand, and also making it so like the things that you do have do other things that are, whether it's healing, that's non-magical or more medicine based, that everybody can use and pick up, so they're not dedicated to have that healer in their party.
Yeah, I definitely agree because like I said, we've played a lot of other systems where they're starting to introduce the idea of mundane healing methods, and it's definitely that's definitely more useful, more reasonable. Like I just want to play a fighter because they're the best at fighting. Because why would you play monk? The second like, oh, and I really want to play. I've literally played a dwarf cleric in third edition Dungeons and Dragons. That the group's like, no, we were a large group. They had plenty of healing. I'm like, okay, well, I want to take all these buff spells and just be a badass battle cleric. Okay, well, even if we didn't have a healer, and I decided I just want to play a war cleric, why would I have to be shoehorned into playing? Oh no, since I'm a cleric, I have to take all these heal spells because that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So, and also adding into, I'm not sure if fifth edition has a downtime mechanic, but adding in a way of crafting these, if you're going to introduce a method of healing, have a bunch of items geared for that, and then yet again have a downtime method of like, okay, well here's what the mechanics of the system say you have to do, gold you have to spend, time you have to spend, equipment you might need, and the DCs for all this stuff to be able to make items that are useful and it may be in the comments. Maybe you want to make an anti venom potion or something like that, but it's not magical. It's just like, oh, I'm putting these salves together and drinking this fights the snake venom. So there should be a mechanical way of making items and also a way of non-magical healing. It just makes it more fun. It gives it more variety of characters you're going to have in your game.
Very true.
Stop putting me in a box. Stop it.
Like,
no, I always thought there should be more non-magical healing. I'm not against magic, right? We are playing in a magical fantasy universe where, well, yeah, but also like non-magical makes sense. It's there would have been people who tried to heal non-magically, right? Like it just is. Right, like, yeah, on the battlefield, you could scream cleric, but they might not get there in time. And then maybe that spurns your character to learn non-magical healing. Like, hey, I'm never going to be devoted to a god like that, but I got to learn how to stem the bleeding. Because if I could have saved Timmy's life, So we hope you enjoyed the 5 concepts we put forward. And if you have your own, please let us know in the chat box below. That really helps us out. And if you haven't, if you want to like and subscribe, we'd appreciate it. But hopefully we've brought up a conversation. Maybe this starts your conversation with your own table, and you guys can see, you all can see how close or far we are and your table is from what the next evolution of Dungeons and Dragons will look like. So from myself, from Fabio, and from Steve, I want to say we are nothing venture, nothing game. Giving advice, rolling dice with a little bit of that New York spice. Say goodbye, everyone.
Later.